So can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Carol. I am a professional portrait photographer. I'm from Kuching, Sarawak.
Hi, my name's Villa. I'm an anthropologist and I'm from Kota Kinabalu, Sabah.
Hi, I'm Arlene. I'm from Kuching. I currently work in a local financial institution.
I'm Christine Gloria from Kota Kinabalu, Sabah.
Great. So we have a good representation from both Sabah and Sarawak. So Carol, let me start with you. What is your understanding of MA63, and do you think you've learned enough about this issue during your school days in Kuching?
Definitely didn't learn enough about it, and during school, I think the bulk of what I know about MA63 now has been through readings lately, probably in the past few years. The two main points I know about it now is that Sabah and Sarawak were supposed to be equal partners with the Federation of Malaya and not just a state. And we are supposed to retain control of our borders, immigration, and education system.
All right. What about you, Villa? What did you learn about MA63?
Well, I wasn't a very good student at school, but I would say including MA63 into the discussion, a lot about what we know of the history of Sabah and Sarawak was almost not present in many of the history books, official history books while I was growing up. Up until the late 90s, early 2000s. So essentially, just like Carol, a lot of how I understood MA63 only came into fruition essentially in my adult years, and simply because of a generation or two prior to mine that really harped on it. They made a huge case for it. But I could only really understand the gravity of what we were discussing as an adult.
What about you, Christine?
Yeah, my exposure about MX63 came about few years ago when I visit Museum Sabah, and I don't think most youngsters nowadays want to go visit Museum Sabah because in this museum they give you all kind of information, especially MX63, and the most fundamental about MX63 is what is our right as Sabahans and Sarawak. And let me give me one example. Especially Sabah have immigration laws, their own laws for immigration, and also we use English as a language in court proceedings or state assembly.
So you don't remember learning about anything about MA63 during your secondary school years?
No, we have no exposure on that. We only learn from history book provided by the government.
Okay. What about you, Eileen?
Similar to the people who responded before me, I think our education system only went on a touch-and-go basis when it came to the topic of MA63. So what we actually know is just a very brief, short paragraph in our history book, which was mentioned in a very pass-by type of scenario. So even today that I have friends, regardless whether it's East Malaysians or West Malaysians, asking me the same questions. And a common question that I get: why do you have special immigration laws? Yeah. Why do you speak English in your courts? Why do you have a different land law? And what makes it so different?
Why do I need an employment pass to work in Sarawak?
Exactly, and why do I have to exit Sabah and Sarawak every 3 months?
Yeah.
So these were sadly not expounded or explained in our history textbooks. The difference between East Malaysia and West Malaysia. No doubt, yes, Malaysia came together as a federation. Even the concept of a federation itself is unfortunately not really understood by the general Malaysian population, and it's whether it's our generation, the younger generation, or even one or two before us, sadly it has been diluted down. And yes, as you mentioned earlier, it started from maybe it's our politicians who revision after revision of history textbooks have concise like parts of history, and which in a way, when they say knowledge is power, the least you know, the least you understand, the least you know your rights.
I have to agree with that. I remember preparing for SPM, yes, it's been that many years ago, and a great emphasis from a school teacher of mine was to say, pay attention to the sultanates in the peninsula of Malaya, Pay attention. If you remember, the more sultanate names you remember, the more points you're probably going to score. And while flipping through, there was this small tiny little segment that says, did you know, the Cobalt Commission. And then there was no elaboration on that, right?
Yeah.
So you just thought, oh, another bunch of British people just got together to have a discussion with us. But I have to agree that today, I think, reflecting back on the kind of exposure I had on issues pertaining to Sabah and Sarawak and the MA63, it was almost as if, this subjugation of knowledges was deliberate, I mean, the less you knew about it, the easier it would be to just, for you to essentially score points in the major exams. Who cares how many names you remembered? But the real key points about, I think, identity-linked conversations was pretty much missing.
Yeah.
Christine, do you think that this issue is still relevant today in the 21st century? And do you think that your contemporaries, people of the younger generation, do you think that MA63 is relevant to them, and you think that this will be something that they discuss?
In my view, it is relevant because this is the basis of our formation of our government. We need to go back to the history whereby when was this MA63 implemented, between who, and I don't think most youngsters nowadays knows that MA63 formed between UK, Singapore, Sabah, Sarawak, and also Federation of Malaya. And even in our history books, we weren't told that do Sabah really gain the independence? Do we really have Independence Day? Because in Federation of Malaya, they do celebrate 1957 independence. But how about Sabah and Sarawak? That is why MA63 is important to secure our position in Malaysia. Do we work together as an equal partner, or we are separated as one of the 13 states?
So how do you see Sabah Sarawak's position in the Federation of Malaysia today?
Well, in my opinion, and speaking for Sarawak only, I feel that we have been treated more like a state, right? A state that is just there for, resources. And I don't think we've been treated as an equal partner in this, and on top of that, the very deliberate omission of a lot of these facts about MA63 from our textbooks, I think goes to show how much the government back then was trying to really just suppress knowledge, like what has been mentioned already. And I think it's very important that we are aware of all of these things. I didn't even know that we were partners until like maybe 5 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was always taught that if you look at our textbooks, from what I remember from studying, the long story short of it is, in 1963, Federation of Malaya invited Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore to join to form together this country called Malaysia. A Cobalt Commission was held, and they voted yes, and so it became one country. That's basically what we know.